We're talking about the Trump administration dropping a bombshell, a potential 205% tariff on goods coming in from China. This isn't just turning up the heat, it's pouring gasoline on the fire of an already intense economic conflict. The official word from the White House, dropped late Tuesday, April 15th, positions this as a direct response. They're pointing fingers at Beijing's recent moves to restrict exports and slap on their own retaliatory taxes. The message is clear. China's actions have consequences, and those consequences now look like a massive 245% import tax. This is America First trade policy dialed up to 11. Washington's argument is that China was deliberately throttling the supply of critical high-tech materials. Think gallium, germanium, antimony. This isn't just random stuff. It's vital for everything from military hardware and aerospace components to the semiconductors powering our digital world. So the US feels cornered and is pushing back, hard. Amidst this escalating trade war, Trump isn't just playing defense. He's going on offense, urging China to get back to the negotiating table, basically saying the ball's in your court. From the White House to Wall Street, from Hanoi to Beijing, everyone's watching this economic heavyweight match. Every move sends ripples through global supply chains. The big question is, can Trump strong-arm Xi Jinping into talks, or is this brinkmanship pushing the global economy towards chaos, costing billions? The tension is palpable, unlike anything we've seen in modern history. Bloomberg reported on the 15th that the Trump administration was openly pushing China to make the first move to pick up the phone and restart talks to cool down this tariff war that's hurting both economies. Remember, the US had already hit China with 145% tariffs earlier, which forced Beijing's hand. They responded with 125% tariffs on American goods starting April 12th. But instead of backing down, Trump doubled down, framing this as a fight for fairness, protecting American consumers. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated bluntly on the 15th, "The ball is now in China's court." She added, "China needs the United States. The United States does not need China." That's not just confidence. It's a core part of Trump's strategy. Use tariff pressure as leverage to force concessions from Beijing. And Trump didn't just rely on official statements. He used social media to hammer China, accusing them of backing out of a massive multi-billion-dollar Boeing aircraft deal signed during his first term. Beijing's counterpunch, telling its domestic airlines to stop accepting new Boeing planes for now. That hit Boeing hard. Their stock dropped nearly 5% on April 14th alone, raising fears about the damage to American industries. But Trump remained unfazed, calling it a game China would ultimately lose, emphasizing the power of the 330 million strong American consumer market that Beijing, he argued, simply couldn't afford to lose. According to Forbes, the numbers seem to back him up superficially. China exports about $440 billion to the US annually, while the US only sends about $150 billion the other way. That looks like leverage for Washington. However, China is no pushover. They saw this coming. Beijing had been preparing for a potential trade war scenario even before Trump's second term began. They bolstered reserves of raw materials, diversified their export markets towards Southeast Asia, ASEAN, and Africa, and worked to stimulate their own domestic consumption. A Chinese customs official, Lu Daliang, told Xinhua news agency on the 14th, essentially, "The sky won't fall because of Trump's tariffs." Beijing also played the geopolitical card. Xi Jinping's visit to Vietnam on April 14th and 15th wasn't just a friendly, neighborly call. It was about strengthening economic ties, signing over 40 agreements covering things like railways and supply chains. This move signals China isn't just resisting Trump. They're actively building alternative economic partnerships, reducing their reliance on the US by leaning into regional markets. Meanwhile, Trump is playing a multi-level game. He put a 90-day pause on tariff hikes for over 75 other countries starting April 10th, creating breathing room for negotiations with partners like Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. Press Secretary Leavitt mentioned the White House was reviewing 15 trade proposals from various nations, with Trump wanting personal sign-off on every deal. Talks with Japan and South Korea were reportedly prioritized, aiming to build an economic coalition to counter China. But with Beijing, radio silence on high-level talks. China accuses the U.S. of starting this trade war and demands Washington halt its extreme pressure tactics before any meaningful dialogue can happen. This highlights the deadlock. Trump wants China to blink first and initiate talks, while Beijing waits for the U.S. to make a concrete offer or ease the pressure. This tariff battle isn't just abstract numbers. According to CNN, those earlier 145% U.S. tariffs made everyday Chinese goods like food processors and vacuum cleaners significantly more expensive, forcing American companies to either eat the cost, pass it on to consumers, or scramble for new suppliers. Conversely, China's 125% tariffs hammered American agricultural exports, especially soybeans and sorghum. Think about Kansas farmers facing a crisis as China, which used to buy 60% of their soybeans, effectively shut the door. The pain is felt in China too. Millions of Chinese workers face job losses as export-oriented factories shuttered or scaled back due to the trade war, pushing their economy towards a potential downturn. Trump seemed to recognize some of these costs. He had to make concessions, exempting tech products like iPhones and laptops imported from China from tariffs after intense lobbying from Apple and other tech giants. This decision, announced April 12th, was framed by Commerce Secretary Howard Lance as protecting U.S. consumers. But it also exposed a key vulnerability. The U.S. is heavily reliant on China for electronics and semiconductor components. The New York Times pointed out that around 80% of smartphones and 60% of semiconductors in the U.S. market originate from China or Taiwan, making a complete decoupling virtually impossible. This dependency explains why, despite the tough talk, Trump kept the door slightly ajar for Beijing. Beijing, for its part, didn't just retaliate with tariffs. They restricted exports of critical minerals like gallium and germanium, essential ingredients for America's semiconductor and clean energy sectors. That move sent tremors through Wall Street, causing Nvidia's stock to drop 6% in early April. China also reportedly sent official letters to countries negotiating with the U.S., urging them to unite against protectionism. These aren't just defensive moves. They show Beijing is actively counterpunching, turning the trade war into a battle of wills between Trump and Xi. On the global stage, Trump tried to build leverage by courting allies. Over 75 nations reached out to negotiate after his global tariff announcement. Vietnam, a priority country, reportedly reached a preliminary supply chain agreement. But China wasn't idle. During his Vietnam trip, Xi Jinping emphasized that there are no winners in a trade war and urged ASEAN nations to stand united against U.S. protectionism. It shows Beijing actively working to counter Trump's coalition building, turning Southeast Asia into a key arena in their influence struggle. The stalemate also stems from differing goals. Trump wants China to open its markets further, cut agricultural subsidies, and stop intellectual property theft. Beijing views these demands as vague and coercive. A Global Times report quoted an anonymous Chinese official saying Trump wants them to beg, but China will never yield. This reflects Beijing's growing confidence, believing its domestic economy and emerging market ties can weather the storm. The Economist noted China had already reduced its export reliance on the U.S. from 19% to 14%, showcasing adaptability. Yet both sides are paying a price. Economists warn this trade war could shave 1.5% off U.S. GDP and 2% off China's GDP in 2025. We saw U.S. companies like Apple and Tesla cutting back production in China, while factories in Shenzhen laid off tens of thousands. In this context, Trump's call for talks seems crucial, but his stick-and-carrot approach breeds suspicion in Beijing. China wants tariff relief before talks. Trump insists China has to call us first. As that 90-day tariff pause for other countries ticks down, Trump is betting China will concede. But history, particularly the 2018-2020 trade war, shows Beijing rarely buckles under pressure. Back then, China weathered Trump's sanctions by boosting exports to the EU and ASEAN. This time, better prepared, Beijing might be willing to endure a longer fight, making the cost for the U.S. even higher. Economists warn that without negotiations, U.S. inflation could hit 7% by year-end, hurting millions. So Trump might hold the card of the massive U.S. consumer market, but China wields the power of a resilient economy and expanding alliances. As the clock ticks, the world holds its breath. Will Trump force China's hand, or has he inadvertently lit the fuse on a global economic crisis? The stakes couldn't be higher.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.